Welcome to Across the Pitch. Let's get into it. Let's talk about that absolute madness at Old Trafford, where Diallo just wrote himself into Manchester United folklore. Coming into this one, you're thinking, okay, United haven't won at home in the league since December 1st. Southampton haven't won away all season. Something's got to give, right? Well, what we got was pure chaos. First half kicks off, and honestly, if it wasn't for Andre Onana, this game could have been over before it really started. The keeper pulls out this ridiculous double save to deny Dibbling and Fernandez, and then another worldie to keep out Sulemana. Southampton, who by the way are sitting bottom of the table, are absolutely dominating at Old Trafford. And then the nightmare scenario. Southampton get a corner. Dibbling flicks it on at the near post, and Ugarte turns his back on it, sending it into his own net. First goal Southampton have scored from a corner all season, and United have now conceded 10 from set pieces. The home crowd starts getting restless, and you can feel it. This was going horribly wrong. But then, this is where it gets interesting. 82 minutes in, with United looking absolutely lost, Diallo, who by the way was having probably his worst game in a United shirt, suddenly decides to turn into prime Cantona. Gets into the box, bit of luck with the bounce, and bang! Game on. Before Southampton can even catch their breath, Christian Eriksen, who everyone's been saying is too slow these days, produces this absolutely perfect chipped pass, and Ahmad's there again. The finish? Clinical. 2-1. And just when you think it can't get any better, Harwood Bellis has a nightmare with Ramsdale's pass. Ahmad pounces like a hawk and completes his hat trick. Do you know how special that is? United have only had 3 Premier League hat tricks in the last 11 years. Talk about turning a nightmare performance into a dream ending. Got to give a massive shout out to Xerxes as well. Came on when Rasmus was struggling, and suddenly United had someone who could actually hold the ball up. The physicality, the presence, exactly what they needed. And speaking of impacts, what about Ruben Amorim? The Gaffers trying to implement this new system with a back 3, which by the way is a massive change for a club that's played with a back 4 for 50 years. And you can see the growing pains. The young lads had a tough time of it. Yoro getting absolutely roasted by Sulemana all night, Mainu having to come off at halftime because the intensity wasn't there. But you know what? That's part of the process. As someone said, you can't have the rainbow without the rain, and these youngsters are going to have their bad days. Remember Rio Ferdinand at West Ham? Absolutely all over the place before becoming one of England's best. Jim Ratcliffe was watching from the director's box, and if he didn't see the need for reinforcements after that performance, I don't know what will convince him. You've got no recognized left back for 18 months, young players being thrown in at the deep end, and a new manager trying to implement a system without the right tools. It's like trying to cook a steak dinner with a cardboard box. But you know what makes this result even more special? United's character. Ahmad epitomized everything about what wearing that shirt should mean. Having a shocker for 80 minutes but never giving up, keeping going until the very end. That's the United way, isn't it? For Southampton, though, heartbreak. They did everything right for so long, but just couldn't take their chances. When you're down at the bottom, these are the games that come back to haunt you. Ivan Juric summed it up perfectly after the game. We are like innocent kids playing well, and they score. We have to be more evil. And that's the cruel reality of the Premier League. You've got to take your chances when they come. With Brighton up next on Sunday, United can't afford another performance like this. But that's the beauty of this team right now. They might get absolutely battered on Sunday, or they might go and win 4-0. You just don't know what you're going to get. They've climbed to 12th now, and somehow they're still in with a shout of European football. Only in the Premier League, eh? Let's talk about Bruno Fernandes as well, because this system is asking something completely different from him. The captain's work rate was there as always, running himself into the ground, trying to make things happen, but the execution just wasn't clicking. Too many touches, trying to force things that weren't there. But here's what's interesting. Even on his off days, he's still out there leading by example, still pushing the team forward. And speaking of leadership, This game really highlighted United's structural issues. Amorim's trying to implement this fluid system where the wingbacks push high, but without a natural left back. It's causing all sorts of problems. Mazraoui, who's been Mr. Consistent since coming in, looks completely different when he's forced to play on that left side. The whole balance of the team is off, and at this level, these small details make a massive difference. Garnacho's another interesting one. Mixed bag today, but showed glimpses of what he can do. That cross he put in for Antony? Absolutely perfect. And by the way, how does Antony miss that? Open goal, and he tries to finish with his right foot when he's been left-footed his entire United career. These are the moments that drive managers absolutely crazy. The tactical evolution under Amorim is fascinating, though. Even in this chaos, you can see what he's trying to build. The pressing patterns are there. The ideas in possession are clear. It's just that the players aren't quite suited to it yet. But that's the thing with rebuilding, isn't it? You've got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Looking ahead to Brighton, though, this is where it gets really interesting. Does Xerxes start after that impact off the bench? And what about Ahmad? Do you keep him at wingback or push him further forward? These are the kind of selection headaches managers love, but with United's inconsistency this season, every decision feels massive. But you know what the most incredible thing about all this is? If you'd offered United fans a point with 10 minutes to go, they'd have probably taken it. Instead, they got treated to one of those magical Old Trafford nights that'll be talked about for years. The kind of comeback that reminds you why they call this place the Theater of Dreams. Football, bloody hell. Just when you think you've got it figured out, a game like this comes along and reminds you why we love it. The beautiful chaos of it all. That's what makes this sport special, isn't it? Let's talk about that absolute roller coaster at the Bernabeu, where Real Madrid somehow turned what looked like a comfortable win into a chaotic extra-time thriller. Coming into this one, after that Super Copa hammering by Barcelona, you're thinking, okay, Madrid need to bounce back, need to show some character. Well, be careful what you wish for. First half kicks off and initially, everything's going according to plan. Mbappe, who by the way is looking more and more like that 2022 World Cup version we all remember, opens the scoring with an absolute beauty. The movement, the finish, this is the Mbappe Madrid fans have been dreaming of. And when Vinicius doubles the lead after the break, you're thinking game over, right? Wrong. Because this is where it gets interesting. 83 minutes in, Eduardo Camavinga, who'd been having a decent game until then, gets caught in possession. Duran pounces on it, finds Bamba, and suddenly it's game on. The Bernabeu getting nervous, and you can feel it, that Barcelona defeat still fresh in their minds. Then, drama. Raul Asensio, who let's be honest was probably trying to prove himself to Ancelotti, comes flying in with this mistimed tackle on Bamba. Penalty given, and up steps Marcos Alonso. Ice cold from the spot, sends Lunin the wrong way, and we're going to extra time. From cruise control to chaos in 7 minutes. But this is where the night belongs to one man, Endrick. The Brazilian teenager comes off the bench and absolutely transforms the game. 108 minutes in, receives the ball in the box. This beautiful swivel and shot that just nestles in the corner. 3-2. Before Celta can even catch their breath, Valverde decides to remind everyone why they call him the Hawk. Absolute rocket from distance. 4-2. And just when you think it can't get any better, Endrick produces this piece of magic that just sums up why Madrid paid all that money for him. The awareness, the technique to pull off that backheel flick, pure Brazilian flair. 5-2. But here's the thing. This scoreline massively flatters Madrid. For large parts of this game, especially that period between Celta's first goal and extra time, they looked absolutely lost. The pressing was non-existent, the midfield completely bypassed, and if we're being honest, any team with a bit more quality in the final third would have punished them. Vinicius is another interesting one. Scores his goal, yes, but where's that explosive Vinny we saw last season? Since coming back from that red card against Valencia, something just hasn't clicked. Even that goal felt more like a moment than a complete performance. Got to give a massive shout out to Mbappe, though. Night and day compared to his early season form. The arrogance is back. That first touch is back. And most importantly, That hunger is back. When he's in this mood, there aren't many defenders in world football who can handle him. The big question, though, what's going on with this Madrid team? Two 5-2 scorelines in a row, but completely different emotions. Getting battered by Barcelona in the Super Copa, then somehow pulling this one out of the fire. They've won 8 of their last 10, yet something just doesn't feel right. Ancelotti's got some serious thinking to do. Yes, he was rotating the squad, making 7 changes from the Barcelona game. But when you've got Barcelona fans in the watch-alongs saying they hope to draw Madrid in the next round, that tells you everything about how vulnerable this team looks right now. Looking at the positives, though, that's 5 straight wins at the Bernabeu now. Through to the quarterfinals of the Copa. And maybe, just maybe, we're seeing the emergence of something special in Endrick. 17 years old and already changing games like this? That's the kind of talent that gets the Bernabeu faithful excited. But you know what the maddest thing about all this is? This Madrid team is somehow still in the hunt for every trophy. Yeah, they can look absolutely terrible one minute and brilliant the next. Yeah, they're relying on individual moments rather than cohesive team play. But in this crazy season, where every team seems to have their issues, they're somehow still right in the mix. Speaking of tactics, let's talk about what's really going wrong at Madrid right now. When you look at their press, or should I say lack of it, it's absolutely baffling. Any team with decent technical players can play through them. The midfield structure? Non-existent at times. It's like they're expecting individual brilliance to bail them out every single time. Then there's the Lucas Vazquez situation. Coming into this one, you're thinking, okay, with all these rotations, surely he gets a rest? But nope. And it's not just about him, it's about what it represents. When Barcelona are putting 5 past you in the Super Copa and your response is to stick with the same approach, that's either supreme confidence or something else entirely. The Brahim Diaz experiment was interesting too. Gets the ball, shows some nice touches, but my word, does he love holding on to it? There were at least 3 moments where he could have played someone through, but took that extra touch, that extra second. That's the difference between good players and great players, knowing when to release the ball. Rudiger's another worry. Reports coming out that he's been playing with a knee problem for 6 weeks. In what world does that make sense? But then again, with the center-back situation as it is, what choice do they have? It's showing in his performances too. That explosive pace, that aggressive defending we saw earlier in the season, gone. The youngsters, though, that's where the real hope is. When Endrick and Arda Güler came on, suddenly there was this energy, this hunger that had been missing. 2 teenagers showing more desire than some of the senior players. That's both exciting and concerning, isn't it? Exciting because of what it means for the future. Concerning because why do the kids have to show the way? Let's talk about that Valverde goal as well, because it perfectly sums up where Madrid are right now. No clear pattern of play, no structured build-up. Just give it to Fede and let him unleash one from distance. And you know what? It works. But is that sustainable? Can you keep relying on worldies to get you out of trouble? The Camavinga situation is fascinating too. One minute he's controlling the game. The next he's getting caught in possession for that first Celta goal. Then there's Raul Asensio. One mistake, and you can already hear the alarm bells. Ancelotti is probably never going to play him again. That's the brutal reality of Real Madrid. You might get your chance, but you better take it, because who knows when the next one's coming. The penalty he gave away? That's the kind of moment that can define your Madrid career. Looking ahead, though, this is where it gets really interesting. Las Palmas coming up at the weekend, and suddenly every game feels massive. Not because of the opposition, but because you genuinely don't know which Madrid is going to turn up. The one that puts 5 past teams, or the one that looks like they've never played together before? One thing's for certain, something's got to give. You can't keep playing like this and expect to challenge on all fronts. Either the tactical structure improves, or they're going to keep riding this roller coaster. Barcelona fans wanting to draw them in the next round? 5 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. Madrid might be playing with fire, but boy does it make for entertaining viewing. Let's talk about Brighton finally getting back to winning ways at Portman Road. Coming into this one, you're thinking, okay, Brighton haven't won in the league since November. Ipswich just beat Chelsea at home. This could be interesting, right? And my word, wasn't it just? First half kicks off, and Brighton are doing what Brighton do. All that possession, all that pretty football. But honestly, nothing to show for it. A couple of tame efforts from Mitoma and João Pedro that Walton could have saved with his eyes closed. Meanwhile, Ipswich are growing into the game, and if it wasn't for Bart Verbruggen pulling off 3 absolutely ridiculous saves, we could have been looking at a very different story. Got to mention that Wes Burns' chance as well. 12 yards out, acres of space, and somehow doesn't even hit the target. These are the moments that come back to haunt you when you're in a relegation battle, aren't they? And speaking of moments, what about that collision between Walton and João Pedro? The Brazilian gets booked, Walton needs treatment, and you're thinking maybe this isn't going to be Brighton's day after all. But then, just before the hour mark, bang! Mitoma, who's been pretty quiet by his standards, suddenly finds himself with more space than you'd find in the Suffolk countryside. The finish? Clinical. The defending? Well, let's just say Kieran McKenna won't be happy with that one in the video analysis. You'd expect Ipswich to come roaring back after that, wouldn't you? I mean, this is the team that just outplayed Chelsea. But nah, Brighton just took control. João Pedro nearly doubles the lead with this effort that forces Walton into a worldie of a save. And then Jorginho Rutter, who, by the way, is absolutely flying after that double against Norwich in the Cup, comes off the bench and puts the game to bed. The space he got in that box? Criminal. The scary thing for Ipswich, though, look at their upcoming fixtures. Manchester City on Sunday, then a trip to Anfield to face Liverpool. Talk about out of the frying pan into the fire. And now they're back in the relegation zone on goals scored. McKenna said it himself after the game. It's a setback, no doubt about it. That's putting it mildly, isn't it? For Brighton, though, this could be massive. Up to 9th now, above Fulham and Brentford, and finally looking like the Brighton we know and love. Herzler was spot on after the game. We have suffered in this period. Yeah, you have, mate, but sometimes winning ugly is exactly what you need to get your season back on track. Got to give a massive shout out to Verbruggen as well. Those saves in the first half? Absolute quality. Broadhead, Delap, Hutchinson. All of them thinking they'd scored. All of them denied by the big man between the sticks. That's what you call earning your clean sheet. The fascinating thing about this game, though, it wasn't your typical Brighton performance. Yeah, they had the possession, but they weren't exactly carving Ipswich open at will. Instead, they just showed that bit of quality when it mattered. 2 chances, 2 goals. That's the difference between mid-table comfort and relegation anxiety right there. But you know what the maddest thing about all this is? Ipswich were in League One 2 seasons ago. Now they're hosting Brighton in the Premier League, and everyone's expecting them to compete. That's both the beauty and the brutality of the Premier League, isn't it? 1 minute you're beating Chelsea, the next you're getting schooled by Brighton's possession game. For McKenna and his boys, the challenge now is to not let this spiral. Those next 2 games, they're free hits. No one expects anything. But it's how they respond after that that'll determine whether they're still a Premier League club come May. Brighton, they head to Old Trafford on Sunday, and suddenly you're thinking, hang on, they could actually do something. Let's end it here. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Across the pitch, over and out.